Hi everyone, my name's Lou Sims and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'd love it if you became a subscriber, hit the notifications buttons for when I next go live, like the video, leave a comment, all the things that YouTube seem to love and want. Right, today I thought I'd share an idea using my new Floral Frames stamp collection. And I'm actually using the stamp set called Floral Frames. But actually, rather than make a frame, I thought what we'd do is make a complete background for a card. Now, I've cut a piece of Dolly Dimple's mixed media card to A5-ish. And I'm going to stamp the main focal image to the top corner of this piece of card. I'm using a Versafine Clair ink pad because I know I actually want to watercolour my images at the end, and this ink pad works perfectly for that. So as I said, I'm stamping the main focal image up into the top right corner, and I'm going to repeat that into the bottom left. So they're opposite each other. And once I've done that, I could leave the card as is, and leave all that open space. But what I thought I'd do was actually fill up these open spaces and create a complete background. So I'm just going to use or I'm just going to try and ink, the actual flower portion. And what I'm doing here in the video is I'm just squeezing it in amongst that gap. So you won't see the whole flower, you'll just see a portion of it. I'm going to repeat again on the opposite corner. And I'm just seeing what space I've got left, how much more of the stamped image I can put in. And we've got that now completely covered. So you could use this as a background if you were doing an art journal page and a mixed media piece. We're actually going to be using it to create a card. So let's tidy up and we'll get on to the colouring stage. So you can see a little bit more of what I've done now. I've taken all the stamping layers away. I'm going to be using my Ecoline water brush pens because I like them. They're vibrancy. I can colour quickly with them as well. And I'm really stepping outside my comfort zone, and I'm using purple. It's not that I dislike purple. I just find it a very hard colour to blend with. And I'm not sure why, considering blue is one of my favourite colours. I'm not going to be overly fussy how I colour my images, because what I want to do is just add quite a lot of water to the areas where I've added colour and let the water do its thing and slowly build the colours up together. So as you can see, I'm just adding the darkest colour first to all the flower images. I'm now going to add a lighter colour just to the top part, which will be like my faux highlight, I suppose. I'm not going for proper colouring. I just love to lay the colour down where I want to put the colour, where my eye thinks it should be. I don't want to be overly precious about the colouring. Because it's watercolouring, I think it can be a little bit more forgiving and allow you that little bit more flexibility. So once I've got those colours down, all I'm going to do is just take my paintbrush, put it in some clean water, and I'm just tapping the water over the actual petal areas. I'm going to let the capillary action of the water slowly mingle the colours together and just leave it as is, see what actually happens. I'm not going to do much more blending than that. I think it's nice to have that little bit of surprise and take that little bit of pressure off yourself when you're actually colouring. Oh, I forgot one. Okay, so I'm just going to do this one exactly the same. So I'm just building them up as I've done previously, exactly the same as before. So on my blog, I will put a step-by-step photograph of each of the layers of the stamping, just in case, the video is a little bit quick and you're not quite sure. And I'll put a link to my blog in the description box below. That way you can see where I positioned the stamps on the actual pieces of card. And also, I suppose you could save them as well if you really wanted to. Now, the flowers are all getting done. I think I'm on the last one now. Right, so I'm going to add now a red violet colour. I just want to add a little bit of warmth to the petals, just so it lifts them just a little bit more. I just feel that the purple was making them a little bit too cold. So I'm just literally in the center of each petal, whilst they are still wet, I'm just dropping a little bit of that colour in. I'm not going to use my brush marker directly because obviously that would then give it the opportunity of water to go up the barrel and ruin the intensity of the ink within my pen. So I just find it easier to scribble a bit on the mat and pick the colour up that way. And I know then I'm not going to damage my pen for future use. Right, I'm happy with that. And now it's on to the greenery. I'm going to use, well, I couldn't decide, so I got about 4 colour greens out. But I'm going to use the brush pens and I'm going to lay down what I consider my darkest colour green first. But I'm going to probably use the pens a little bit more as if they were a pen. And rather than watercolour out with them for each of these pieces, I'm going to use them so as a colouring pen. I'm waffling now, aren't I, a little bit? But I think I lost my train of thought about what I actually meant. So just going to put the first layer of colour down, and I'm going to stick to the same colour regardless if it's a leaf on a flower or on one of the borders. Now the bits that come out of the flowers, I'm not going to colour green because I actually think they would be nice to add a little bit of sparkle to these, and I'd probably bring in my Jelly Roll pens because I just think it might lift it again a little bit more. So I'm going over with a lighter colour green, and I'm filling in the areas. So now everything is coloured in, with those pens, rather than like I did with the flowers, which was let the water blend the colours together. I'm actually using the pens as if they were a traditional pen. I will be watercolouring them out, but I'll be watercolouring them out in a way that will help colour the whole of my background. I think when I do it, I think that'll make a little bit more sense. So I've got those bits done now, and I'm just looking at where I've got the frame. So I'm going to start with exactly the same colour process, the slightly darker one first, and then a little bit of the lighter one. And I'm going to use my paintbrush and just some water, and I'm just going to pull the colour out really, really softly. I want to give a quick way as it looks like that I've coloured a background. Quite loosely, and it's got a lot of greenery, or the illusion of a lot of a greenery around the flowers, just by dabbing the water and letting the water spread across the paper itself. So I'll keep building up bit by bit around each of the images, as you can see, and as I move around you can see a little bit more of the colour taking over. And it's not quite so much white now appearing everywhere. I'm quite happy with that because it looks quite subtle, and it's got the look that I actually want. So what I want to do is I want to just add a little bit of green, but I'm going to do a little bit of splatting. So I've just taken one of the colours and added lots and lots of water, put my paintbrush in, and I'm just doing a few splats to bring the green everywhere. I don't want to have a completely watercoloured background, but those little green splashes will just give me what I need. And I'm now going to go and heat it, because the next stage of what I want to do, I do need the paper to be as dry as I can be. Normal circumstances, I would actually let it dry itself naturally, and which gives the chance for the water to do a lot more blending, whereas I'm stopping that blending process now by heat setting it. So we've got in the same stamp set from the Floral Frames these little borders, and one of them's got hearts on it. And I thought it'd be rather cool just to add a little bit more detail into the open areas of the frame. So I'm just going to build up with those hearts. and just, you know, just add, take away again from the whiteness. Now, if that's not your thing, just leave as is. For me, I just needed, I don't know, I'm not a less is more person. I'm probably a more is more person. And sometimes, I do kick myself because I think to myself, you should have just left it where it is. But hey ho. So I'm going to repeat it on the opposite side and build up the pattern with the hearts and that little strip. It's a great stamp if you wanted to actually, do a little bit of writing on, or use it as a starting point if you wanted to add your own designs or doodles in. I've decided to stagger the little hearts because I thought it looked a bit better there, rather than actually doing a whole line to fill the space. I might try the project again and actually do that, fill it with a whole line and see what it looks like. Right, whilst the stamp is on my block, I had this idea that if I stamped the border stamp top and bottom, and then I got the sentiment from there, and I sandwiched the sentiment in between these borders, it's like a faux matten layer for the sentiment. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just adding a top border and a bottom border. And I thought it might be a different way of framing the sentiment. My ink pad is, I think, a little dry, but I've just left the sentiment to one side to cool. Okay, I've just put the sentiment to one side just to dry whilst I do something else on the background. I'm going to bring in my Sakura Jelly Roll pens, and I'm going for the sparkle pens first. I just want to add a hint of sparkle. Now, I don't know. Now, I'm not sure if you know or not, but whilst the ink is still wet with a jelly roll, you can blend it out. Now, the ink doesn't stay wet for very long because they're meant to be quick drying. So I'm taking a damp brush and I'm pulling out that ink. So I don't actually lose the sparkle at all. I just make it a little bit more translucent so it fits in a bit more, with the design, rather than being opaque and solid. Regarding how much water to put on your brush, how I would say it is, if you put your brush, knock back as much water as possible and put it on the back of your hand. If then you can see water on the back of your hand, it means there's still too much water in the brush. I like it to be damp. So if I put it on the back of my hand, I can feel that the brush is damp, but it doesn't leave a trail of water on my hand. Now, I hope that makes sense. She says, fingers crossed. So I'm gradually going around all the little pieces, and I'm putting a tiny bit of the ink and just pulling it out with that damp brush. And I'll lift it up to the camera and you can see it'll add just a tiny little bit of extra sparkle to those pieces. And again, it just elevates things, but I don't have to use glitter. And I'm going to carry on doing that and fill in all the different dots as well for each of them. To lift the centres a little bit more, I'm keeping to the same pen, and I'm just following the lines from the stamp and extending them. And then I've just put a few dots on there. And I just thought this gave a very subtle sparkle as well and lifted the flower. And I'm going to repeat that on all the flowers. Just extend some of the lines, add a few dots, just to brighten it. I didn't want it to stand out, but I just wanted it that if you looked within the flower, you could see that actual detail. And I'll do exactly the same on the smaller bud-like flowers too. Now, I could have, now looking at doing this, is I could have actually done exactly the same with the leaves and added a little bit of sparkle to them too. But I didn't think of that at the time. It's only now that looking back, I think, oh, that would have looked quite cool as well too. I'm going to use a different coloured sparkle pen for the hearts because I think it'd be nice just to introduce another colour. And I've gone for like a deep rose pink. It won't look pink when I put it down, but it'll look slightly darker than like a baby pink. And I think it will actually fit in with the colour scheme we've got. and we'll, you know, again, bring in another colour, but without it being too shouty and hello, I'm here. So I'm going over some of the dots and the hearts and just bringing in that colour. And again, I'm using the same damp brush technique, so I still get the sparkle, but in a more translucent nature. It looks like really weird that I'm doing one and then working with the paintbrush. It's that because the ink for the Jelly Roll pens has been designed to dry quickly, I don't actually have that much time if I want to pull the colour out. So you do really need to do this technique in smaller areas on your project. It's a great way to control a little bit of sparkle and glitter as well, and also, you know, create depth or texture. I'm not sure how to explain it, what it does, but it does lift your project without it being too shouty. Sorry, I think I went into full waffle mode there. Right, the sentiment that I did earlier, I'm just going to cut around the little hearts, and this was the idea I had in my head, using the border and the sentiment, and I actually thought it would give like a faux matte layer and colour the hearts in to match what was done on the project. So I did all of this, laid it on the card, and I got to be honest and say, I really didn't like it. I don't know whether I should have just stamped the border as in top and bottom, cut those out, and then stamped the sentiment onto a separate piece of card, and then added it that way. But the two together, to me, just did not go. So I'm just going to stamp the sentiment out onto a piece of card, and what I'll do is I'll cut it down and matte and layer it. The idea in my head when I was doing this card was that I was going to mount it onto a black card base, and I'm not sure now. I'm not sure whether it should go onto a, you know, a similar coloured background, or it goes on the black. I think it's going to be one of those things that I'm going to get to a certain point in this project and I'm going to have to walk away and then come back and see about the matching and layering, rather than make a decision now that I go, oh, no, I really wish I hadn't done that. So the sentiment I'm just going to mount onto black card, but I'm going to use 3D foam pads to raise it up first. And as you can see, I think a little bit of overkill with the 3D foam pads. I'm not sure that sentiment really needed 8 foam pads, but hey ho, it's got them now. So I want the sentiment to stand out, you know, from the background layer. I don't want it to be merging in. I'm just going to trim it down, so it leaves, you can see the border around the outside. And once that's gone on, I think what I'm just going to do is it'll just go on the card as is. I'm not going to add any other embellishments. I'm just going to leave the card, you know, just to be about the background. I've taken my black ink pad because I thought it'd be nice just to add some black to the corner parts, just to tie it in just a little bit more. But for now, that's where I'm going to leave my card. Now, if you pop over to my blog, you'll see what else I did to the card. I only did 1 or 2 extra things, but I just had to do something. But I did that actually the following day because I found it easier to come back to the project and I could see where I wanted to work. Thanks ever so much for your time and company, and I hope you enjoyed seeing another idea of how to use the Shady Designs Floral Frames stamp set. Please do share what you create with the stamp sets, because I do love to see everybody's ideas and what colours people pick and choose. I think that is part of the creative process too. Again, thank you for your time and company, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye-bye. Take care.